Ladies and gentlemen, I think we just found our Endgame bass set. No, I'm not kidding. This is true Endgame. Let's begin. Welcome back, Audiophiles. It's me, your boy Joe, back again with another video, and this time we'll be looking at the Nightjar Acoustics Duality. Now, this particular unit has been graciously given to me by the Audio Geek group as well as the Nightjar and Symphonium group altogether. So, huge thanks to all of them for sponsoring this unit for review. And as always, all thoughts and opinions are my own and no biases whatsoever. With that said, let's talk more about the wonderful thing that is the Duality. Now, the Duality is a dual DD IEM, so hence the name Duality. This is from the Nightjar Acoustics brand, which is known for another really good IEM, which is called the Singularity. And that one is a single DD IEM, which has been highly praised for its natural timbre. And now from those guys, we're going to be having a bass monster of a set that is the Duality. And as for the quick disclaimer, I am being given the Duality along with just its particular carry box that you'll see in a minute, and no packaging whatsoever, but that's how we're going to roll with it, and I'm going to be showing you my thoughts and impressions on this. So to begin with, the Duality is costing upwards from 3,000 US dollars. Yes, you heard me right. This is a $3,000 IEM, so it's no joke. As usual, I'll leave non-affiliated links below so you can check them out as you want. Without any further ado, let's begin. So as I said, the Duality has been given to me from this box and this carry case. So let's just begin with those accessories that we're going along. I don't have the actual, the unboxing experience per se, but given this particular carry case is having literally everything else that you need in it, that is all the unboxing that you pretty much need. So first and foremost, this box that you see in here is what ships along with the Duality, and as you can see, it's a real beast of a kit. It's actually a clip type box, and inside the box you have everything that you need. So to begin with, we are having a wonderful looking pouch that will contain the cable for the Duality. You could see the Nightjar Acoustics branding on it, and we're also having a wire tag as well as, of course, the Duality in all of its glory. We'll get to that in a minute. And earphone hooks thingies, the usual that you put your earphones inside these. So it's all the safety that you need. Moving on from the carry case, we're going to be looking at the puck case of the Duality itself. As you can see, it has this kind of D logo. That's the kind of symbol for the Duality. And inside that, we are having all of the IEM in its glory. Have a closer look. So the Duality is a metal shelled IEM with a nice faceplate design which has these circle style design elements to it. And if you are looking closely, you could also see that there are two switches on the Duality. We will look into the switches and those features in a minute, but that one actually enhances the bass even more. And if we go away from that, you can see that the shell is pretty smooth. It has a nice contour to it. It's not so much of a custom fit per se. It's just more in a generic design, which is pretty nice. I like it. And moving on from the IEM, we could see that there are no ear hooks. So this is a non-ear hook style design as for the stock cables. There is a red element in here so you know which one is left and right. And from there, we have the cable, which is pretty good, albeit a little bit on the thin side, which then goes to a very nice Y split, which has that Nightjar logo in it. And it also has the Y split in here. Regarding the chin slider, even though the chin slider does work under pressure, so if you do clip it up to your neck, it does hold it in place, but it's a little bit on the smooth side. So if you do have no pressure in it, you could see that it just slides all the way down. So that's a little bit of a bummer, but it's a good working chin slider nevertheless, so I don't want to worry about it too much. The Y split is nice. It has that logo and it has that same aesthetics for it, so it's not generic, which is pretty good. And then we finally have a very nice braided cable design, which then finally goes into a nice big bulky 4.4 plug. Regarding the cable, I think the cable is pretty good. It doesn't have any memory in it and is actually pretty nice and supple to use. It's a tad too thin to my liking, but honestly that's just a personal preference. But the cable itself is of good quality, so that's very nice. As for other things which comes along with the IEM, we also going to be looking at an impedance adapter, which also comes in if you're going to be paying a little bit of an extra premium on top of the $3,000 that it already is. You can use an impedance adapter to boost in the bass even more further. So that we'll be looking at in the sound impressions as well. And finally, as for other things to talk about, we'll be having a box of ear tips in which one of the set is actually a Divinous Velvet set, which is really nice. That's what I'm actually going to be using for the review, as well as the standard red, white, and yellow color. These ones are the standard silicone, small, medium, and large ear tips. So now it's time for a fit test. Here we go. Fit wise, I would say it's a tad on the chunky side, but I don't really bother with it much. But the fit is really good and snug, especially with the Divinus ear tips. The Divinus ear tips, I'm actually using one size smaller because if you do use the medium one, it's a little bit of an extra pressure in the ear. So I'm going for one size smaller, and that fits really well. But as for the design itself, it's really comfortable, and since there's no ear hooks per se, there's no irritation whatsoever, so it's pretty smooth in design. And like I said, the chin slider holds when it's in pressure. Only if you release it, it'll fall down, but other than that, it's actually holding on pretty well. Here's the right side, and here's the left side. So on the whole, really comfortable to wear. I was able to wear this for long periods of time, but then regarding that, I'll let you know in the sound impressions. But on the whole, comfort-wise, really good for me. Now with the earphones plugged in, it's time to move on to the sound impressions. Moving to the sound impressions, we're going to be looking at the frequency response graph of the Nightjar Acoustics Duality. And before we do that, my usual disclaimer, the frequency response graph is not the be-all end-all of telling how a signature is for an IEM. There are certain nuances that are not captured in a frequency response graph, so I'm just here to show you a little bit of an overall as to how it could sound like. But take whatever I say with a huge block of salt. With all that said, let's look at the frequency response graph. And as you can see in here, the bass shelf is off the roof. We're looking at both the upward and the downward switch of the Nightjar Acoustics Duality. As you can see, if you do have it on, it goes almost close to 20 dBs in the sub bass region alone. And if you have it off, then it'll be in still a little bit on the high side with the sub 10 to 15 region. And all that sub bass will then go towards an okay, clean looking mid so far, which then goes to a funky looking vocal section overall, and then finishing off with the air and presence. So this is by all means a Basshead's IEM with the copious amounts of sub bass that you're seeing in there. If you move the switch up, that is when the bass is activated, and that's where you could get that huge sub bass. If you move it down, you get a lower bit, but you could still see it's that much bass in there. In terms of the mids, I say that the mids are pretty clean despite having this much bass. It's a little bit colored, yes. I don't call it the cleanest of mids, but on the whole, despite this much bass, that much mids is really good. And the vocals, despite all this mid and bass region, the vocals are actually pretty clean. It's not the most highly detailed of vocals, of course, but you're not here for the vocals if you are going to wear the Duality. It does feel really natural. The timbre is actually marketed to be a nice natural timbre, and that timbre is really good in the Duality as well. It feels smooth, it feels natural, and it feels lush. There's not much in the micro detail department, but it does feel good. It's not drowned in the bass at all. So the vocals are good. In terms of the overall air and presence and the high frequency instruments, really smooth. There's no peakiness, there's no sibilance in here whatsoever. There's that amount of bass is there. You don't get that sibilance factor or any of the sharp instruments at all with the Duality. In terms of overall drivability of the Duality, I would say that it does run off well, but it does need a lot of good power instruments in order to drive to its fullest extent. If you try to drive this thing straight off your laptop, your bass would actually feel really muddled. I'm going to tell you now itself. You need a really good power DAC or an amp with the DAC for the best results on the Duality. Even in my case, I was able to run this pretty well even with the Kane RU3. This was a recent DAC that I'm trying to go for review, and it's really good. It has 500 milliwatts of power, at least to my knowledge, and this was able to run the Duality to a pretty good instance as well, so that's pretty nice on the RU3. As for my setup, I'm using the Gustard, and the Gustard on a high gain with the volume at close to 40s and 50s is where I'm starting to get the Duality to its fullest potential. The bass is even more clean, even more better than the RU3 for that matter, and the bass is more impactful as well. The bass thump and the bass cleanliness is really good. So if you're going to use the Duality, then I would suggest you need very good DAC amp stacks or very good power DAC amps in order to get to its fullest benefit. Alright, so with all that said, time to move on to the song impressions. All right, so moving on to the song impressions. As usual, all the songs that I'm listening to, I will give it to you in the form of an Apple Music playlist down in the description so you can listen to the songs that I'm listening to. So, beginning things off, we're going to be listening to Oh My God from G Idol. So, this one is a K pop style song, but it has a very, very good bass line that comes in the drop. And that bass line can even be earth shattering if you listen to it with the right equipment. That is the duality. When the bass line hits in, there'll be a very good deep sub bass rumble that comes in when the part that they sing, oh my god, and then they sing it. And that is done really well with the duality. It goes such to the extent that you could even feel it in the center of your mind and it vibrates your entire skull. So that is immense and that was super powerful. And when I try to put the duality on the off position, so if I put it down, I still get a bit of that rumble, but you don't get that earth-shattering, that mind-boggling sub-bass rumble that will vibrate. So that vibrating rumble comes on when you do turn it on. But if you turn it off, you still get a really good amount of bass. I would still say that it is excellent bass. But if you turn it on, you get that immense boggling level bass. Okay, so this one is in comparison with Deuce. If I were to compare it with some things like Deuce and Martello, Deuce has a very good sub bass, but I would say Deuce's sub bass is more towards a over smoothened side. It is kind of veiled in an essence, but the duality sub bass is much more cleaner. There's actually good presence of the individual instruments in there. Even the low frequency instruments you can make up very well with the duality. That's the better part of duality as compared to things like Deuce and Martello. Martello, I would also say it's having better bass than the Deuce, but then duality just takes that to a step further. Even an IEM such as the Theo Audio Origin, that one is an excellent IEM with a huge amount of bass, but that bass is kind of like nothing compared to the amount of bass that this is pushing out. That bass is also a kind of rumbling bass, but it is having a fatiguing bass to an extent because of its kind of overall presence and vocal region. The duality, on the other hand, has a lot of energy, but it has that energy that you're comfortable with. So if you are having it in the switch up position, do prepare yourself. If you're a guy who usually listens to that kind of heavy bass, you'll be totally fine. Other than that, if you're a person who wants to enjoy the bass but a very clean, good bass, you could switch it down and then you're okay with it. But if you want to live dangerously, like I do, you could just crank it up and you could enjoy it. I have also tried it with the impedance adapter. So this kind of effectively gives you 3 bass settings. So you could either be switched off, or you could switch it on, or you could switch it on and keep this connected. Or technically there's a 4th setting where you switch this off but then keep this connected, but it's kind of like pretty much the same in that case. So you have 3 overall bass settings that you can effectively use. And when I use this in here and then connected to it, it did lift up the bass to an even more higher extent. But I would say that this one is at the cost of the vocals a little bit. So then the vocals kind of fall one level down and then the bass goes up. So more than the kind of bass with the mids and then a vocal, it's just humongous bass and then mids and then the vocals goes down. So the bass is the most highest in the overall graph if I were to picture it. But in that sense, I would say that it's a bit more veiled. I would think that you could try using this if you're in travels, or else if you're in an overall outside environment with a lot of noise and you just want that bass to reach you, then that's probably what the use case for this. But at least for my case, I'm pretty much happy just having the bass turned on and not using this. But if you do want to have even more bass, which is overall a little bit comically too high for me, but if you want to do that, that's also there for you, so that's an option. But for my case, I have tried with this and I feel like it's more comfortable for me with just this on and not having an impedance adapter. But hey, to each their own if you want. Okay, so the next song that we're going to be looking at is Old Town Road by Lil Nas X and Billy Ray Cyrus. Now, this one was a hit of a song at its time, and by all means, it's a super song to test out bass because the bass rumble that's in here is super deep and super thumpy. When I'm listening to this song with the duality, when the bass does kicks in, that bass is super. It was just amazing. It once again, it kind of vibrates your head when you're listening to it. Of course, in the on position. If you do switch it off, you don't get that vibration sensation much, but you still get it to one extent. but when I switch it on, beautiful. It's so good that I can't help but thump along to the bass. In terms of the vocals, this one is male vocals. It's pretty good. It's very clean in listening with the duality. There's no sense of overall peakishness or anything. There's a snare drum that happens in here, so if your earphones do not render it well, it does perceive to me as a little bit on the sharp side, but the duality did so well. It was very smooth. The snares felt pretty natural. It didn't hurt me at all, and I really thoroughly enjoyed it. So that's the kind of sense I got from the duality. The overall left and right is pretty clean. I would say the soundstage is also pretty wide. So it's above average, wider soundstage, and that's how I feel it to be. The stereo effects is pretty good. I would not call it to be exact stereo location wise, but I could sense in an overall region, like it's somewhere in this area or else it's somewhere in this area. So that's how I perceive for the stereo imaging. But overall, the bass is all what it's about. So that bass is ultra thumpy, and it's also really good in clarity. So that clarity bass, rather than the soft mushy or pillowy style bass, no, we're talking about super clarity bass. So that's something which is perfect in the duality. So excellent song, done perfectly well with the duality, I would say. So what are my overall thoughts and impressions about the Nightjar Acoustics Duality? Well, first and foremost, the comfort is really good. It's a tad chunky shell, so if you are having medium to large ears, you're really good. If you're having smaller ears, then maybe the fit would be something of a concern to you, but maybe you could ear tip roll that out. But do keep in mind, this is a tad on the chunky side for the shells. The cable itself is really good. It is a little bit on the thin side for me, but I really don't mind with that kind of a cable. It's pretty good. Working chin slider with a good Y split and a very good cable. And regarding the other accessories, we even have a very good quality impedance adapter, as well as a very good set of ear tips to match. In terms of sound, this is all about bass. The bass, by all means, this is a Basshead IEM approved. This is perfect amount of bass. I wouldn't say perfect. It's in fact a bit more than perfect, but hey, there's no such thing as enough bass in this planet. So it's a really good bass, very deep, very guttural bass, and it does ring your head when you're listening to it. In terms of overall power requirements, it does need a good amount of power for it to shine, and it's pretty good in that aspect. If you do give that power, it shines and is plenty. So it's really good. What would I give as a rating? Well, as you can see with my smile and my grin, this is of course a Basshead's Endgame. There is the fact that you have to give an eye-watering $3,000 for it, so the price point on this is really steep, and I can't blame you for that. But if you are willing to shell out that amount, you are having an IEM, which is by all means Basshead Endgame. I can't imagine anything which is much more than this. This is in fact my benchmark for bass right now. It's at that kind of a level. So by all means, I would gladly give this a 5 out of 5 on my rating. But then the only aspect is that it is so expensive. It's $3,000, so that ain't cheap. There are IEMs which are really up there on the Basshead scales, and they are literally half the amount of this particular one. But hey, if you're in the mood to get something and then you want it to be a done and dusted case for a Basshead's IEM, this the duality for you. So that is something out there. Nevertheless, it's an excellent choice. It's a really good one, and I don't have anything else to tell about the duality other than the fact of its pricing. But that is my review of the duality. Do let me know your thoughts and comments down in the comments below. What do you think about the duality? Are you one of those lucky few who's having this super endgame IEM? Do let me know your thoughts down there in the comments as well. And as usual, if you do like my reviews, give me a thumbs up. If you don't like my reviews, give me a thumbs down. I don't know. And this is Joe, and I would see you in the next review. Peace.